Shabbat Shalom. In this week's Torah reading, we read about a faction under the leadership of a man named Korach, who rise up and challenge Moses' authority as leader of the Israelites. One of our great sages from the 19th century, a rabbi known as the Malbim, looks at this episode and sees in it a really beautiful perspective or approach to dispute, how we could look at argument and see in it both blessing as well as opportunity for division. He looks at Korach, he looks at this entire episode and notices how Korach was not only engaged in dispute with Moses, but that he was in dispute with peace, with Shalom itself. Off the bat, argument sounds like a negative thing, especially for people like myself who avoid conflict and would really rather prefer that everyone just get along and agree. What could possibly be good about arguing, about dwelling on those areas about which we disagree? Well, the Malbim points to Pirkei Avot 5:17, in which we are taught that there are two different kinds of dispute, or machloket. Pirkei Avot 5:17 begins, "Any dispute which is for the sake of heaven will be blessed with a meaningful sense of endurance, and that which is not for the sake of heaven will not be blessed." What is a dispute that is for the sake of heaven? The dispute between Hillel and Shammai. First, there is the idea of an argument for the sake of heaven, machloket l'shem shamayim, which is characterized by the arguments between Hillel and Shammai, two great scholars in the Talmud who are the archetypal opposing schools of thought. Their arguments are not of an ugly, personal attack. That's not the nature of their disagreement. Rather, their arguments are a loving, devoted expression of their commitment to furthering and deepening the understanding of Torah. And the important feature here is that they oppose each other in their interpretations of how to serve God and how to work towards a greater good. They speak to each other. They engage with each other. They say to each other, why? Why would you say this and not that? Why do you see it this way? Wouldn't we accomplish an even greater good? Wouldn't we fulfill God's will if we approached it this way instead of that way? And the bottom line we are taught is that despite their differences, the followers of Hillel were not only welcome in the homes of the followers of Shammai, but their children would even marry each other. They were able to live together. They were able to celebrate together. So that's the first example of dispute that Pirkei Avot offers to us. Argument for the sake of heaven, machloket l'shem shamayim, a positive difference of opinion, a pluralism, if you will, that allows for multiple perspectives, a positive generative energy which leads us to increase growth and creativity in the world for the sake of heaven. Pirkei Avot 5:17 continues, "And which dispute is not for the sake of heaven? The dispute of Korach and all his faction." The opposing model which Pirkei Avot offers us is an argument that is not for the sake of heaven, such as that of Korach and his group. And immediately that sounds odd. Wouldn't we expect it to be the argument between Korach and Moses? The answer, as some commentaries say, is that in his dispute with Korach, Moses was still acting for the sake of heaven, but that the same cannot be said for his antagonist Korach, who is seen to be acting out of self-interest. Acting out of one's own self-interest is by its very definition not acting for the sake of heaven. It is not acting for the sake of peace. Rabbi Yehuda Leib Alter, the Gera Rebbe, also known by the pseudonym Sfat Emet, he explains that when we act for the sake of peace, we're acting in a way that goes beyond ourselves. We live in a world that is created by one God, but which turns into a world that is filled with multiplicity and division. How are we to restore this fractured and fragmented world back to a state of oneness? We do so by directing all of these fragmented elements towards the one. We do so by endeavoring to create holiness in the world. We do so by creating peace in the world. And peace, as we know, has at its root of shalom, the word shalem, which is whole and complete. Even though Korach wanted to be the high priest, the Kohen Gadol, it wasn't that he wanted to be the richest sheep owner or the most powerful person. He wanted to be the holiest. And on the face of things, that's not so bad, right? But when we scratch away at the surface, we see that we should be very anxious about anyone who wants to be the holiest. That's not a pursuit for God. That is a pursuit for oneself. It's not a pursuit l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven. And the essential point here is that even the goal to be a good or a holy person is a limited goal in human beings. We're not able to get there alone. In order to know true shalom, to know true peace, to know true wholeness, one has to be able to go beyond oneself and to reach and strive to be part of a bigger picture, to be part of Shamayim. Shabbat Shalom.